As the club's approaching impact, the club is going to move around your wrists. We want that movement to be nice and a nice free motion. So how do we go about doing that? What are some of the checkpoints that we can look at to ensure that it is working correctly? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Peter Knight, and I've created this channel, Peter Knight Golf, to help you play your best golf. And today we're going to look at what's happening through the wrists as you swing down. The way we're going to do it is we're going to do a drill where you'll swing the club back to, say, where left arm is about roughly parallel to the ground and the club's roughly vertical. So I'm forming an L shape between, say, my arms. When I swing through, I'm going to recreate that L shape on the other side. So I'm moving from an L shape here to an L shape through here. It's a drill that we give a lot, particularly to beginning players, but it's relevant to pretty much all players because it looks at how the wrists are moving, how the club moves, whether or not it's square. So there's a number of different reference things that we can, reference points that we can cover as we look at this. So the first is that when I swing the club back to here, this first L, when I get to here, the back of my hand and my forearm are reasonably flat. So when I swing through to here, if we look from side on, my wrist is not bent this way at that point. And as you can see, if you look at the club face, it's going to be affected by however my wrist is oriented. So from here, my wrist is reasonably flat. The second thing is if I address a golf ball and go back to that same L, from here, it appears that an extension of the shaft is going to be pointed down toward the ball. So it's pointed on my target line. So my target line is a line running between the ball and my target. So as the club gets back to here, the shaft of the club or an extension of it is pointed down to that target line. When I get to the other side of my body, as you can see, just my body's blocking most of the movement, but the shaft again is pointed along that target line. And in fact, from here all the way down and through, the club's followed a nice uniform orbital path. So as it swung down and through, it hasn't moved around one way or the other as it's gone through. It's followed a nice uniform path. So that's one of the elements that we can practice to get this feeling of how we're going to move from L to L. The next thing is that when I swing the club back, actually if I go to address from here, you can see that there's a slight angle between the shaft and my left arm. When I'm forming the L, the club's moving from here to here. So it's not moving through a huge range. So when I swing the club back, say from address, where I've got that angle between the shaft and the arms that I just showed you, and I get back to here, my wrists have hinged sideways a little bit. Again, they haven't moved around here. And so there's just a small amount of movement. Now, as the club approaches the ball, my wrist will naturally unhinge. Just the swinging weight of the clubs or the physics of the swinging weight of the clubs and my body's rotation means that the club will naturally unhinge and move toward the ground. Once it's got to the ground, it's going to move away from the ground naturally, again, because the club's swinging around my hands. Now, all through that time, as the club's swinging down, the back of my hand and my forearm, and this is sort of another point that we can practice with this, the wrists are unhinging, but there's no change to the flatness, if you like, with the back of my hand and my arm. So that's still flat through there. Once I get past here, the wrist will probably bend a little bit, no big deal, as long as we've got to impact with the club and the wrists in the correct position. So if we sort of put it all together, moving from that L to L, I'm back at the L, shafts pointed toward, say, my target line, or from the down the line view, the shaft appears to be pointed down towards the ball. From here, as the club approaches the ball, the wrist will naturally unhinge, and as long as this wrist is still flat, the club should meet the ball with the shaft leaning forwards a little bit, which helps to give me that sense of compression, which is a correctly struck shot. When I time it properly, the club will meet the ball and the ground at the same time, and then it's either going to brush the grass after I've hit the ball, maybe taken some grass, and maybe taken some grass and dirt. So if I play this shot from here, I'll go back just to the L, and the L, as I'm swinging through, maybe went through a little bit further than that, but I'm getting all of the elements of that movement correct. The ball was sitting on the ground here, the club's struck the ground and taken some grass and some dirt just after I've struck the ball, which is absolutely correct. That ensures that I'm catching the ball with a very slight descending blow. When I make a fuller swing, as I swing the club back and down to this point, I can have the L on this side. Now, because of the extra force of the movement, I may not get to here and have the L on this side. It might take a little bit longer before I get it. But again, that's just the forces acting on me as a golfer swinging the golf club, that it's going to work a little bit later, because I want that L to come not from a hand manipulation, but just from the club swinging freely. So now if I go with a fuller swing, so I didn't take any grass or dirt on that occasion, but when I swung the club through, like the club is probably in line with my arms about here somewhere, so I'm a long way from creating that L, but it doesn't matter as I'm swinging down and through. It's more important to practice the movement on both sides, but when you're swinging the club, it's more important to have the sense that you've definitely got it in the backswing movement, even more important in the downswing movement, and then as you swing past impact, if it's not exactly the same, then it's going to be pretty close. So practice doing that L shape. If you record yourself, you can just make the shorter swing slightly slower and go through the checkpoints, and you'll find that that will actually help you to get the feeling of how the club and how the wrists are going to work better, and that'll give you a lot more control over your ball flight.